So, how many of you remember the days before Netflix when we had to physically go to a movie theater to see a movie? Okay, great. So, what was one of your favorite movie theater experiences? Mine was Star Wars. What was one of yours? Someone want to share? Lord of the Rings. Harry Potter. Likewise. What was it? Matrix. Ooh, Top Gun. Now you're talking. Okay, so whether you knew it or not, as the movie was about to start and the lights went down in that theater, you signed a silent contract with the rest of that audience. And that contract said, for the next 2+ hours, I'm going to suspend my disbelief about what I am watching and embrace it as if it were true. I'm going to invest my heart and spirit in it as if this was true. Because if we didn't, we'd be sitting there for 2 hours saying, why are there teenagers flying around on broomsticks? Why are there lions singing and dancing? And why is everyone dressed up as Barbie? But we don't do that, right? We accept an alternate reality as real. So what if we could take that same sense of magic and wonder and suspend our disbelief outside of the theater, in life, in business, in tackling big, important issues like climate change? What if we could do that right now? You want to do it? Yeah. I turned 40 and I can't hear. One more time? Oh, okay, thank you. Cool, let's try it. Okay. So, suspending disbelief is not just a way of thinking, it's a theory, it's a practice. So before we dive into the process of what that is, I want to take a brief moment and I want to invite you to join me in pausing. Pausing to take a moment to breathe, be here now in this moment together, and just ground ourselves. So I invite you to join me in closing your eyes, letting your shoulders drop. Let the stress of the day and the week and the world roll away. And let's take 3 deep breaths together. Here we go. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Put your hand on your heart. And consider the following 2 questions. First, in one word, in the absolute most descriptive word possible, how is your heart today? My heart is anticipatory. What about you? One word. Who wants to share? Ticking. I love that. Amen. What else? Heavy. What else? One more. Peaceful. Full. Hopeful. I love that. The second question to consider, in a sentence or less, what story are you telling yourself today? What story are you telling yourself today? Mine is that I need to not only build healthy boundaries, but I need to maintain them so that I can show up for myself in the same way that I show up for others, and being gracious with myself when things aren't the way you expect them to be, when one thing is out of place. What about you? What's your story today?
I will keep doing the things I think I cannot do.
I will keep doing the things I think I cannot do. What else? One more.
Optimism is abundant, execution is rare.
Optimism is abundant, execution is rare. Cool, talk's over. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so these stories are important because our lives are composed of the stories that we tell ourselves. And we tell ourselves thousands of stories every single day. Most of those stories aren't our own. They come from external sources. Family, friends, media, social media. The current bombardment of stories and stories of stories that aren't ours. But just like when you were in that movie theater and they said, please put your phones away, please stop talking, please put your Blackberries away if you still have one, and the lights came down, they created a pause. And we can do that anytime we want. And we do that by putting our hand on our heart, taking a few deep breaths, and listening to the stories that we tell ourselves. Now, the most important part of the stories that we tell ourselves are the words that we use. What are the descriptive words that we use? Because the words that we use shape the stories that we tell ourselves. And the stories that we tell ourselves shape what we believe. And what we believe shapes our reality. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or can't, you're right. The words we use shape the stories we tell ourselves. The stories we tell ourselves shape what we believe. And what we believe shapes our reality. So in order to suspend our disbelief and transform our reality, we have to do three things. Surprise, we already did the first. Pause. Pause. Everyone do this with me. Actually, everyone stand up for a sec. Oh, I hate when people make you do that. Okay, we're going to do three things. Ready? Just follow me. 1, 2, 3, and again. 1, 2, 3, and third time for good measure. 1, 2, 3, and what's this one? Excellent, sit down. Okay, so once we've paused, given ourselves space to breathe and listen to our own stories, then we ask a big, powerful, bold, ambitious question. What if? What if? What's your what if? When I was a kid, my favorite television show was MacGyver. Anyone ever heard of it? Yeah. Okay, so MacGyver was an agent for a government organization, sort of like the CIA or FBI, but not nearly as intense. But what made MacGyver different was that he didn't believe in violence or weapons. And yet invariably, week after week, MacGyver would end up in some insane situation where he either had to escape or rescue people surrounded by an army of men with guns, and the only thing that he had lying around him was a roll of duct tape, a paperclip, and a rubber band. And all of the people with MacGyver, their story was, this is it, it's over. There's no way out of this is the end. I had a good life. But not MacGyver. MacGyver had a different story. His story was, whoa, hold up. What if there is a way out of this? What if it is possible? His question was, what if it's possible? So I'm wondering, what is your what if? What is the thing you're trying to build? What is the thing you're dreaming of? What's the change you want to create? Mine is, what if I travel the world helping leaders take the thing that they think is impossible and turn it into reality? What's yours? Who wants to share? What's your what if?
What if you can empower normal people to see the thing they can change and have them change?
Ooh, and have them change them. Amen. And on that note, let's talk about the topic of the day, climate. What if we could solve the climate crisis? Oof. Exciting, scary, terrifying, exhilarating, ambitious. And this is where things get dangerous, because as soon as we say out loud to the world, what if we do this big, bold, ambitious thing? Then all of a sudden, the external stories start creeping back in. All of the reasons we can't do this. We can't do this because that's not how it's done. We can't do this because it's too complicated. We can't do this because it's never going to happen. And that is where this process gets fun. Because when we suspend our disbelief, we get to take those we can't because reasons, when we cross out we can't because, and we replace it with we can if. We cross out we can't because, and we replace it we can if. What needs to be true for this dream to come into life? We can do it if these things become true. So how do we do that? We do it with the third step of our suspending disbelief process. But before we do that, what was step number 1? Oh, I didn't believe that. What was step number 1? Pause. Do it with me. What's step number 2? Cool, do them both with me. Ready? Step number 1, pause. Step number 2, what if? One more time. Here we go. Step number 1, pause. Step number 2, what if? Stellar. Okay, so what if we use magical constraints? What is a constraint? A constraint is something that on first glance seems like a limit, an obstacle. We all have them. We don't have enough time, money, resources, skills, knowledge, people. But what is a magical constraint? A magical constraint is a creative paradox that ignites massive action. A creative paradox that ignites massive action. So let's talk about MacGyver. MacGyver had 2 constraints, time and resources. Time because there was an army of men with guns about to break down the door, and resources because all that was in the room was duct tape, a paperclip, and a rubber band. But what MacGyver knew was that these constraints weren't limits, they weren't obstacles. Right? Constraints can unleash superpowers of possibility and creativity. They can unleash superpowers of creativity and possibility. And when you combine them with your what if, suddenly anything becomes possible. So he didn't just say, what if we could escape, leave it there, and say, oh, and also, these are my constraints. Oh, well. No, he said, pause. What if we took these constraints and we used them to see life through a different lens and create solutions that we couldn't think of before? What if we took these constraints and we turned them into a magical lens that allowed us to see things we didn't see before? So, pause. What if constraints are magical? One more time. Pause. What if constraints are magical? One more time. Pause. What if constraints are magical? Okay. So, MacGyver knew this, and that's what allowed him to create solutions week after week that let them escape and live life happily ever after. Or at least until the next episode when he was in the same situation. So how can we take the same creative paradox and ignite massive action in something like climate? How can we use a paradox to take our constraints and make them magical? So, what if we could solve the climate crisis in the next 12 months? What if we could grow more food with less resources? What if we could neutralize the carbon footprint from cows for less than $1 a day? What if all of these are possible? Because when we ask powerful what-if questions and we pair them with magical constraints, we're able to suspend our disbelief and transform the reality around us. That is how we suspend our disbelief. How many steps are there?
Is that cool? Oh, so
Work with that.
when that's that.
3 steps. 3 steps to suspend our disbelief in any situation at any time on any topic. And those 3 steps are, do it with me, ready? Pause. What if constraints are magical? One more time. Pause. What if constraints are magical? Cool. So, now that you know constraints are magical, being mindful of the words that we use and these magical constraints, here's another question for you. In 5 words or less, 5 words or less, what is your biggest takeaway from the last 10 minutes? 5 words or less. Who wants to share?
Pause. And
She said pause and the rest. Cool. Who else? One more?
Constraints are magical. Constraints are magical.
Constraints are magical. One more? Yeah. Constraints are magical. I love that. Okay. So, constraints are magical. Now, thinking about all of the information you've heard today from all of these speakers on all of these different issues within climate change, there's so much information. But the difference between information and transformation is action. One more time. The difference between information and transformation is? So now that you know you can suspend your disbelief at any time in any situation and transform your reality, I only have one more question for you. And that question is, as you walk out this door today, what are you going to do about it? Thank you very much.